right here.
So I owe you an explanation. Deadline White House, hour 2 starts now. I promised you Nicole Wallace. I'm disappointed, too. She's having some issues getting to a camera in our studios. They just assumed I had nothing else going on this afternoon. They assumed correctly. What I have is Ali Velshi at the wall. And what I'm going to ask of Ali Velshi while we wait for Nicole to get in and seated in the studio is a tour of the states that, as I was saying last hour, people can now recite the states, the margins. If you can take us on places where the vote is open, places that can conceivably together, added up or on their own, equal 270 for Joe Biden, who appears to be closest to that mark.
All right, let's do that. Let's just take a quick look at that march to 270 right now. So we don't have Alaska, and we will not have that for a while. The presumption at the moment is that that goes to Donald Trump. North Carolina, we're not going to have for a little while, and I'm just going to put that in Trump's column for the moment. This is just an exercise, okay? It doesn't mean that's going to happen. Let's even say that that happened in Georgia. Now we're looking at Nevada and Arizona, where we're expecting things to come in. At the moment, Joe Biden has the lead in Nevada. Joe Biden has the lead in Arizona. Now, if that continues to be the case, there you've got Joe Biden with 270. But we don't know because we haven't got enough votes counted. So let's take those out of play at the moment. In fact, let's take them all out of play at the moment. These are all the states that we don't have. And let's look at Pennsylvania. If you put that into Joe Biden's column today, Joe Biden gets 273 and he wins Pennsylvania. If you put it into Donald Trump's column today, Donald Trump gets 234. So Donald Trump has to get Pennsylvania. Then he's got to get Georgia. Then he's got to get North Carolina. Then he's got to get Alaska. He still doesn't have 268. He's got to get Nevada or Arizona. Okay, so that's just the math. If you look at the paths to victory, let's just go back on this for a second. Look at the paths to victory. As we stand right now with the uncalled states, Joe Biden has 9 combinations that get him to 270. Donald Trump has 3. There's 1 combination that gets us to a tie. Then it goes to the House of Representatives. Now, I just want to give you a look at where we are in a couple of these states right now. I would say that because Pennsylvania is as important as it is, all eyes are on it right now. We have 96% of the vote in. Joe Biden's lead is 14,541. There is confusion out there about what remains outstanding in Pennsylvania. There are 2 buckets of votes that are not counted completely yet. The mail-in ballots, according to the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, are mostly counted. Now, I don't know what mostly means. I don't know if that means there's 15,000 left or 50,000 left. I'm talking to our folks in Pennsylvania to try and get an answer. There are also provisional ballots, and we know there are more than 85,000 of those left. Provisional ballots are if you got a mail-in ballot, you went in to vote, you didn't have your mail-in ballot with you, so you voted on a provisional ballot, and they have to match those up together to make sure you didn't vote twice. That could take 7 days to get. I'm looking for Allegheny County right now. We have 95% of the vote in. We are expecting votes to come in very shortly from there. Right now in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, Joe Biden has a 128,000-point lead, but we're still waiting for some few thousand votes to come in there. So I'm paying a lot of attention to what's going on in Pennsylvania. We're also hoping to get some votes from Nevada right now. That's just a slow counting issue. 92% are in. We need more from there. Joe Biden has a 20,000-point lead, but a lot of the places where the votes are not counted right now are Washoe County, which is where Reno is, and Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is. Look at that. Clark County, we only have 87% of the vote in, and we're a few days from Election Day. And before I give it back to you, I'm going to just look at Arizona, because I know you're going to talk to somebody in Arizona in just a moment. We have 94% of the vote in. What we are looking for is the votes coming in from Maricopa County around Phoenix. We have 93% of the vote in, with Joe Biden having a 60,000-point lead there. In Pima County, Tucson, Joe Biden has a 98,000 vote lead there with 95% in. And in the county around Flagstaff, again, 95. Joe Biden has a smaller lead there, 17,000. But Joe Biden right now has a 40,000-point lead in Arizona. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, all too close to call. We're not talking about Alaska right now because they still have about half their votes to count. Brian?
Ali Velshi at the big board while Steve Kornacki undergoes court-mandated rest and nourishment period. Thank you. And I am told, to a national sigh of relief, palpable relief, Nicole Wallace has arrived at the studio. I've never been so happy to see you.
Thank you so much for pulling extra shifts. We should pull back the curtain on what our lives are like. We don't know when this is going to end, like all of America, but because of the dynamics of broadcasting in a time of a pandemic, we're all moving and staying socially distanced. I was running up to take a test, so I did, anyway, such are the times in which we are covering the most riveting presidential contest in recent history. Thank you so much for staying there for so long.
Quite welcome. I'll be watching.
I'm very grateful. Let's, with no further ado, turn to NBC's Mike Memoli, who was at Biden campaign headquarters for us in Wilmington, Delaware. Mike, what is this? We've talked over and over again about this campaign stoicism, their steadiness, their long game. It's all three of those coming in handy on a day like today.
Well, yes, Nicole, with perhaps this exception. I think for a lot of the Biden campaign team who had sort of kept that even-keeled temperament throughout this week in what had otherwise been sort of a roller coaster of emotions through Election Day and beyond, the moment when Pennsylvania showed Joe Biden ahead for the first time and within striking distance of that 270 electoral votes, I think a lot of the campaign staff let themselves for the first time publicly get to the point where they were talking about him as the president-elect, where they had been very reluctant to do so. As our own Kelly O'Donnell heard from a source familiar with Joe Biden's thinking, he's very Irish, very superstitious, and was wary of himself getting ahead of the result, and that trickles down very much to his staff. And so once we did see that moment, there was very quick movement on the part of the campaign to get ready for a celebratory victory speech tonight behind me. And then as the day went along, what are we seeing? The slow count, the lack of projections on the part of news organizations. And so for Joe Biden, and you know this, the speech of a president-elect on election night or whenever an election is certain is as much the beginning of governing as it is the end of a campaign. And Joe Biden takes this very seriously, the opportunity and the burden of beginning what he has talked so much throughout this campaign about, the need to unite the country, to lower the political temperature, and to show that he would govern on behalf of all Americans. So I think there's reluctance on the part of the Biden team to put the former vice president out here tonight to give anything close to a celebratory speech, absent some sort of independent projection that he is, in fact, the president-elect. So that's sort of the state of play at this point, Nicole, but so much has changed and quickly over time, and we'll just continue to monitor the goings-on behind us for any signs that could change.
I talked to folks sort of on the Trump side, and there was recognition that Joe Biden is the winner. There was acceptance that on January 20th, he would be inaugurated. And there was some cautious optimism that Joe Biden, not being the kind of person to deploy swagger and go out there ahead of these calls, would, and I know this is really hotly debated in Democratic circles, but would serve him well, that it wouldn't give Donald Trump another applause line at whatever sort of antics he has up his sleeves for the coming days and weeks. Is Joe Biden driving all the decision-making about holding off on any sort of celebration until the network calls are made?
I think he's absolutely setting the tone internally, at a time when a number of the staff, as I mentioned, were really for the first time letting themselves think of this as a victorious campaign. Biden, I'm told, was very much relaxed but reflective and not necessarily ready himself to get to that place. And Nicole, I have to remind or share a story about my own experience covering Joe Biden. It was 4 years ago, on the eve of the election, in fact, election eve, Biden campaigned with Tim Kaine in Northern Virginia. It was sort of meant to be a passing of the torch type moment. Tim Kaine, the vice presidential nominee, Joe Biden, the outgoing vice president. Kaine's remarks that night were very much the remarks of somebody who thought he was about to be elected vice president. And then Joe Biden took the stage after him. And he said something that always stuck with me, especially after the result and still to this day, and I think is relevant to this moment. He said, God willing, we're going to win this election, but an awful lot of people are going to support at the time, Donald Trump, now President Trump, and he said we have to ask ourselves why. Why was he able to appeal to a certain segment of the country and the need to speak to them? And that was something that guided his thinking once Hillary Clinton lost, once he considered running himself. And it's very much his mindset, I think, as he looks forward to governing, because, frankly, I think the results, Joe Biden would have preferred a resounding victory, something that would maybe drive a stake in the heart of Trumpism. But what are we seeing? Not just historic turnout for Joe Biden, who will receive more votes than any other presidential candidate in American history, but strong turnout for Donald Trump, who will get the second most votes for any presidential candidate in American history. And so it's a very difficult road ahead for Joe Biden, but I think all indications are that he wants to manage this moment very, very carefully, and that's, I think, what we see playing out tonight.
Mike Memley, that is the exact conversation I want to have with our additional guests. Are you racing off to report something, or can you stick around for a couple more minutes?
I'll stick around a bit, Nicole,
right.
as long as the people in my ear tell me that's okay.
Okay, all right. So Mike Memley's going to stay with us. I want to bring into our conversation three of our very good friends, the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network, the Rev Al Sharpton. Also joining us, MSNBC political analyst, my friend, the Senator Claire McCaskill, and Jason Johnson's back, journalism and politics professor at Morgan State University and MSNBC and the Griot contributor. Jason, I'm thinking of you as Mike Memley is talking about Joe Biden's DNA, which is simply that he's always cognizant of the fact that even when you come out on top, millions and millions of people voted for, curtain number 2. You and I have already, Wednesday, I think, the days have all blurred into one, had this conversation about how Joe Biden should position himself to achieve his own stated goal, which is not to govern the red states or the blue states, but to be a president for all Americans, whether they voted for him or not. I wonder what you think as Joe Biden is being deferential to the traditions and the practice. I mean, let me just assert this, too. If the shoe were on the other foot and the networks hadn't made the calls, Donald Trump would be having the gaudiest victory celebration in the gaudiest ballroom you could imagine at Mar-a-Lago or somewhere, or probably some state-owned property, to be honest. So Joe Biden is reverting back to norms and traditions, and I wonder what you make of it.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. And here's why. One, yes, if the situation were reversed, Donald Trump would be doing, donuts on the White House lawn right now and throwing out.
And we don't know that he's not, to be fair.
Right. That's true. That's true. I mean, he's kind of built this wall around the building. And I'm not saying that we have to sort of debase the White House or debase politics based on what we've seen from Trump for the last 4 years. But, I would like to think, and maybe he's just doing this now until it's official, but it's like, dude, you won. Joe Biden, you won. It's abundantly clear you won. Everybody's just being slightly cautious right now. You're ahead in every single state. You're ahead by amounts that are very, very difficult for Donald Trump to overcome. You've won more votes than anybody else. You flipped 4, possibly 5 red states, some states that hadn't been Democratic for a good 20 years. You have a mandate. Act like it. And part of having a mandate is saying, yes, I'm the president for everybody, but it is my responsibility to represent the whims of the majority of the people who put me in office, which means Republicans and Trumpists do need to be pushed aside. It does mean that you don't have to be deferent with Mitch McConnell, who you've seen does nothing but obstruct things. So I'm not encouraged by Joe Biden wanting to be so peaceable at this particular point. I don't want him to waste the first 2 years of his presidency trying to make peace with people who have no desire to work with him. He needs to act like somebody who won and start pushing through his own agenda. And anyone who stands in his way needs to be steamrolled.
Claire McCaskill, I want to come to you, and I want you to pick up on what Mike Memley's reporting, what Jason Johnson is, I think, voicing for a whole lot of people. I think that is sort of the mood of the room. But you know Joe Biden, and just sort of try to thread all those needles for us.
Listen, I saw today where the Biden campaign put out a statement that said the government will usher out any trespassers. That's an indication that they are not going to put up with Trump trying to co-opt this period of transition. And I think he will be aggressive. Now, here's the thing. Steamroller would be great, but we've got this problem that we don't have the Senate. So it is hard to steamroller when you've got that kind of obstructionism. So you either have to try to figure out a way to get some things done that really matter to the American people. And if you can't, then you've got to take your case to the American people and then hopefully clean house in 2 years. But if you just come in and say it's my way, you've got this problem that we don't have 50 senators. Yeah. So it is the practical part of this. I've been in the minority in the Senate. Yeah. I know what it feels like. I know how frustrating it is when Mitch McConnell gets to decide every single thing that's on the floor of the Senate. He has no obligation to consider any of Biden's legislation. So you can either decide that's going to be the new normal, or you're going to try to figure out some way to wiggle around it and pick off a few and get some stuff done that we really care about. I kind of hope that happens, but if it doesn't, then, I agree with Jason. He can't act like he didn't win. He won big.
Yeah, I mean,
or as Trump would say, bigly.
Rev, this will not surprise you, but it still leaves me gobsmacked. You touch base with folks in Trump world, and none of the conversations are they are acknowledgement that Donald Trump may have done some harm to the country he ostensibly leads with his off-the-wall remarks last night. Not off the wall. I think they were incredibly strategic, but they were complete fiction, fantasy. But all the conversations with sources on that Trump side are about Donald Trump and Donald Trump's state of mind and Donald Trump's psyche and what Donald Trump needs. And this source said that what Donald Trump is experiencing now is two things. It's rejection on a massive scale. And it is sort of being cornered. There's nowhere to go. He lost on January 20th. There is no remedy for a sore loser.
Well, that's where Donald Trump's mind is. It's always only on Donald Trump. So clearly, this is the first time I think his niece said it best, that he has nobody to bail him out. There is nobody that can come in and intercept for him. There's no foreign bank that can give him a loan when everybody else wouldn't. There's no way out of this. But I think going to Mike's point about Joe Biden, who I've known also for 30 years, I was against him on the crime bill, and then we worked together very well for 8 years under Obama as me from a civil rights outside point of view. I think Joe Biden will behave the way Mike said, but I agree he needs to clearly say, I'm the winner, but I won for the American people. And we're going to do the things that we said, and I'm willing to work with others. But it is a duty for those that want to see things done in a humane and decent way. I think he has to take the reins of where we're going, because you can't heal. And I really believe, from knowing him, he wants to be a healer. But you can't be a healer without dealing with the injured. And then you've got to address the fact that there are people that are injured in this country that have to feel that they've won and now have a shot at being healed. You can't act like the injured and the injurers are the same thing at a healing. You've got to distinguish the injured from the injured, and the ones that are doing the injuries, in order to bring a healing together. Otherwise, you're only confirming the injured. Healing means somebody was hurt, and those that were hurt by the pandemic, by other social grievances that we have, feel like we did not win something. At the same time, you've got to do it in a way, I agree with Claire, that you get some things done. But let's not act like we're all in the hospital on the same level. Some of us were put in there because we were hit by a car that Donald Trump was driving.
That's right. That's right. Mike Memley, you may not know the answer to this, and even if you do, you may not want to say it on national television. I'm going to ask anyway. Do you know if there is any back channel? Because someone like Joe Biden, who served in the Senate, who counted among his closest friends Republicans like John McCain, and I have to say, when John McCain ran for president, his friendship with Joe Biden obviously didn't include any support for his presidential campaign, but the friendship endured. And I wonder if Joe Biden has any back channels to the Republican side during what Donald Trump made sure last night would be an incredibly difficult and really confusing time for his supporters.
Yeah, Nicole, it's one of the threads I've been trying to report out already is reaching out to Republicans who I think he would be likely to be reaching out to himself at this point. At this point, I don't know that there is any outreach that either side, frankly, is willing to disclose at this point. But I will say this, as somebody who was on the plane with Joe Biden every day during the 2008 campaign, once he was selected as the running mate, it became something of a running joke about how he would preface every attack on John McCain with, my good friend, my dear colleague. We actually, at one point, those of us in the traveling press brought a John McCain cardboard cutout on the campaign press plane with him to sort of underscore that point. But there's another thing
Wait, let me give you the counter story, because I was on the other plane, and we would say, so here's what they're saying, and he would say, who said that? And we'd say, your good friend Joe Biden, and he would sort of, go like this. So that conversation happened on both campaign planes.
But I wanted to add one other layer to, I think, the dynamic around whether Biden speaks tonight and the moment that the campaign was envisioning, and it's this. Joe Biden was the vice presidential nominee in 2008, and he was the sitting vice president in 2012, joining Barack Obama on celebratory election nights. Joe Biden did not speak on either of those nights. Our reporting is that Kamala Harris was going to speak tonight. And that's, again, a decision from Joe Biden that is going to underscore not just Joe Biden's victory tonight, but a historic moment for the country. The first woman and a woman of color being elected as vice president of the United States. And I think that's another factor to consider about whether or not to speak tonight absent a victory. I think they want to let that moment also get the attention and have the national attention that it deserves, really. And so we should be considering that as well.
I want to get you in on that, Jason Johnson. That does seem like, I know what you're articulating, and I know a lot of people who feel the way you do about going out there and acting like a winner. But wanting to give Kamala Harris her moment is a pretty intentional and it would seem noble reason to wait.
It's America's late to the game, so it's really good that Harris is out there. I mean, so many other places in the continent of Africa and Europe and Asia have all, you can go back to the Marcos. Every other country, every part of the world has had a woman in this kind of position before, and now finally the United States is catching up. Senator Harris has been qualified. Senator Harris went through a great campaign. Senator Harris has been a wonderful surrogate. Senator Harris is historic. But I also think this, and this is what I'm excited about in hearing her speak tonight. I really think this is going to be what we saw with Trump and Pence. That's going to be the last time that I think any party runs a ticket of two straight white guys. I don't think it's ever going to. I think Senator Harris isn't just making history for herself. I don't think we will ever see another ticket that does not have a woman, does not have a black person, does not have somebody Hispanic on the ticket. And she is that doorway. So I really hope she speaks to that. She is a fantastic role model for lots of black women. We all know people who worked very hard on her campaign, who I think are really going to put through some great work. But I think Senator Harris is going to be so much more powerful as a vice president than maybe a lot of vice presidents we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, because she is going to have real policy and symbolic significance throughout this entire administration.
Those important points. I'm glad we came back to you. Mike Memoli, thank you for sticking around a lot longer than I know you planned to. I'm grateful. And if you pick up anything else in the next 45 minutes, please hop back in front of a camera for us. The Rev, Claire, and Jason are all sticking around, of course. When we come back, as Donald Trump watches his chances for a second-term slip away, he's launching all sorts of fake allegations